Welcome back to the October edition of Conversations. And what a treat it is for me to welcome Sister Mary Prisca to be part of this edition. Sister, welcome to Conversations.
Thank you, Archbishop.
I'm going to tell our viewing audience a little bit about your history. First of all, Sister entered the Sisters of Mercy, believe it or not, in 1934. That means that she is now 78 years a woman of the consecrated life. We were talking before this taping, and she also reminded me that she's approaching a blessed birthday, 97 years old. Now, Sister, I'm just going to mention to our audience about how very talented and forward-looking you have been for decades as an educator who served, first of all, as the founding principal for Assumption High School, introduced the Trump program for Mercy Academy in the 1970s. I noticed that in 1985, you were the first recipient of the Mercy Academy Educator of the Year Award. And in 2011, just last year, the chapel at Assumption High School was named in your honor. Wow.
That was lovely.
Yeah. And as if that weren't enough, Sister Prisca is also known well beyond our archdiocese for her dedicated work with the right to life on pro-life causes, faithfully going to abortion clinics to pray on many Saturdays, participating in the Walk for Life. And this month, which of course October is the month of respect for life, it's especially appropriate. So, Sister, thank you for being here. I know we're not going to have enough time to talk, but before I say anything, tell us about your vocation story. How did Christ call you to be a woman religious?
Well, as I said to you before, I'm afraid that I'm going to talk too much, but I went to school with my little sister. She was older than I, a year older. So she was 5 and I was 4. They let me come to school and I was 4. And my mother...
This was in St. Louis?
Yes, in St. Louis, the Sacred Heart School, right. Sisters of Loretta.
Okay.
And so I was... they told me I could go to school with my little sister if I were good. So I was sitting there, and my mother had taught me to read. I was only 4 years old. There was a little book like this, a little language book, and I was good as gold sitting there reading that book. And on page 17, as I turned the page...
Now, by the way, this is only 93 years ago, you're recounting, but page 17.
As I turned the page, on page 17, there was a little girl, looked like 4 years old, dressed up like a Sister Loretta, and underneath the picture there was a sign that says, "I want to be a sister."
Oh.
And something hit my heart right then and there. And then, I went into elementary school, and it was still there, just kind of, warming up. And then, of course, I went to high school, and it was still there, warming up. But I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to Spalding, which we called Nazareth in those days. Right. And I thought, I won't have to go. I was fighting it. I won't have to go, so I'll just go to college. So I went to college, and I can remember there was a retreat in January, and I was miserable because it was still grinding on me. So that summer between my freshman year and my sophomore year, I just kind of, played around and everything. And my aunt had financed my clothes and my books for the first year. And when it came to the second year, she was nowhere around. So I still had this feeling that I was going to go to college. So I went down to Nazareth, and I came back that morning, and I said, "Mom," I said, "my books are going to cost $100. And she said, "I don't have the $100. And so I just walked out. Something made me walk out. And we lived on the edge of Anchorage, and we had 3 fields. Walked through the first field, walked through the second field, walked through the third field, and walked around that end field. And I walked around that end field, walked around. I must have walked around 7 times.
Wow.
I came back, and my mother was sitting on the porch, and I heard her say to somebody that came up to see me, "I don't know where she is. She's been gone all afternoon." Oh. And so that night, I sat down and wrote a letter to Sister Mary Camillus and told her I wanted to enter.
Wow.
And
so,
you know what, Archbishop? If I hadn't done that, If I hadn't listened to our Lord, I would have been a miserable, miserable person.
Yeah, I can see your life of happiness that overflows and touches so many. You know, we say that the call to vocation comes at our baptism. My gosh, you were only 4 years old when that seed began to grow, and it wasn't until really you said your sophomore year in college that the Lord finally said, enter the religious life.
So
well, what a blessing that was, not only, as you said, for you, but also for so many whose lives are touched through.
I call it my $100 vocation.
I love it. I love it. I love it. That's a great, great story.
That's
a great story. Now, we could talk forever about many things, but the one I want to especially talk about is we live with so much opposition to a culture of life, and yet you have been a shining example and a witness. Tell us a little bit about what inspires you to work, especially for the life of and be a voice for unborn children.
Well, I'd like to say that when I was in high school and religion classes, nobody ever mentioned abortion.
Right.
Nobody, you know. And so this one day I was at Mercy, and a phone call came, and somebody took the phone call. They came to me and they said, "Sister, they have just legalized abortion." And I can remember I just froze in my tracks. It just froze me. And the next thing I thought in my head, I thought, oh, the Catholics will rise up tomorrow and it'll get over. The whole Catholics will try. Well,
this was 1973.
There was not, nobody rose up. The next day was just smooth, and the next day and the next. But it struck my heart, and I had to do something. So I found out about Margie and the Right to Life cause, and I got into it right away. And I've been into it ever since, and I'm going to die.
For 40 years.
Yes, and I'm going to die in it.
Well, you're an inspiration. You're an inspiration to, no, you really are, to so many people, because at approaching 97, most people would say, well, you deserve a break. but you continue to use such energy to affect others. And I remember when we had that Belle of Louisville boat ride.
We had a good time on that.
We sure did. But so many people talked about the influence you had on their lives. You influenced especially so many women in high school, and I could see they've kept contact with you. What advice would you have for a young woman who's listening right now or watching our TV program?
First of all, I want them to get involved in the Right to Life and think about what's happening, the terrible, terrible thing. 54 million abortions. 54 million abortions. And then I would want any girl, a young girl that's listening, that's having trouble, to make sure she knows what to do. That there are pregnancy centers around that help. There's a Nicole place. There's a Joan Smith's place over in New Albany. There are helps everywhere. Even a parish church would help. And then never to submit to the terrible thing that I see every Saturday morning as I go down there and watch those young girls. Some of them are defiant. Some of them are crying. But they go in there and they know they have killed their baby.
And your compassion, I often will preach, and when I do, I'll say, you know, the 3 C's. We need to be courageous, and you have courage. We need to be compassionate,
that's right.
And you have compassion. And we need to be civil. We need to treat people with great dignity. And boy, you are a poster for all 3, so thank you.
Well, we're having a little trouble down at the pregnancy center down because you know about that preacher. There is a preacher down there that instead of attacking abortion and going in, he's attacking the Catholic Church. So we're having a little trouble.
Well, I know that you'll keep it on the right message and you'll be civil.
We are.
Sister, let me say this. This time flies by, but one of the best decisions that we ever made was asking you to come on this program. So thank you. I want to thank you so much for being part of the program. And I want to thank the viewing and listening audience. Thank you for being part of this second segment of the October edition of Conversations with Sister Mary Prisca. And please stay tuned for the final edition.